Coffee grows in the sort of tropical regions, sort of tropical band around the globe, the equator, and go up a little bit and down a little bit. That's the band that it grows in. It grows at high elevation. Some of the best coffee in the world grows on the sides of volcanoes. So, I'm just going to talk just a little bit about where the labor, there's a lot of labor that goes into it. It's just like, it's like the CSA or the small organic farm model here. It's a very labor intensive. There's no machinery that does picking and planting and stuff like that. And most of it takes place on the side of these very steep mountains. That's just very unique. It's grown in a region of the world that's still very poor. Even at fair trade prices, it's hard to be honest and say that we're pulling them out of poverty. I wouldn't be honest if I said we're pulling them up to American level of income or anything. They still live in poverty. Although we've seen a lot of changes over the years in communities that we buy from, definitely going in the right direction. So the first part about it is maintaining the plant. There's a lot of work that goes into it. The coffee life, the life of the coffee tree is about 5 to 10 years where it's producing really, really good. Or no, when it's 5 to 10 years old, when it's sort of its maximum production capacity. So not only do they have to be picking and harvesting every year and doing that, but they also have to be maintaining their level of production, which is planting new plants on sort of a rotation, so that every 5 years they're sort of maximizing those plants coming to a growing period to make up for plants that will be dying off. This is just showing some agricultural technique. This is just an erosion barrier. Because it's on the side of mountains, topsoil loss is a major problem. Nutrient levels is a major problem. They've always got to be, coffee drains the soil with a lot of nutrients. It requires a lot of nutrients for it to be really high quality. So they've always got to be working on that. One way they do it is erosion barriers, that stays topsoil. Another way they do it is composting and having their own big compost piles and adding nutrients back into the soil. This is a pretty young coffee plant. This looks like maybe a 3 to 5 year coffee plant. It's already producing some berries. You can see the green berries, but they're not very thick yet. This is what it will start to look like when they start to enter harvest season. And the one thing about coffee that's a little bit different, well, it's kind of like whole beans. The plant will have to be harvested over a month-long, 2-month-long process. Every day, the same plant will have to be harvested. Only the best red cherries will be picked off. And they are a cherry. They're called a coffee cherry when they're at this state. And it's very similar to a cherry, it's not in taste, but in texture. It has sort of a sour taste. So they'll go over the plant, every single day. They'll go over their whole fields, and it's a really bad picture. Their whole, this is a good harvest. If you get green ones in there, they're just not developed. And then after that, that's only the very sort of beginning of the labor. There's a lot of processing that goes into the coffee after that stage. Like I said, it's a cherry with 2 coffee beans nested inside it, and it has to go to a facility like this. And different farms and different regions, they have different technical capacity. This happens to be a cooperative in Guatemala that got the opportunity to buy a plantation that was a functioning plantation before the Civil War. So they bought it and rehabilitated it. There's a lot more technology here than there are at most of the places we work with. They have a wet processing facility. So after the bean comes off the tree, it has to go through a pulper, which is like a cherry pitter. And it just takes except in this case, you're not saving the cherry, you're saving the pit. And then the cherry goes into compost piles. Pits go through a process of soaking. They call it fermentation, but it's just soaking, and there's a skin on the outside that it helps remove. And then it has to be dried. So this is actually the roof of a house that we're standing over, and they're drying their coffee on the roof of their house. This is the drying patio at Santa Anita. At this point, the cherry's been taken off. It's been wet processed. So now there's a hard outer skin over the coffee bean still. So that you have to sit out in the sun and dry. Every day it'll sit out all day long, and then at the end of every day it'll have to be pushed back into storage containers until it's kept dry overnight. The humidity goes up too much at night, so the food actually. So and this is a huge facility. This is Sol Cafe in Nicaragua, and this is, I mean, every day this was a crazy operation to see. This picture doesn't even do it justice. I mean, the piles of coffee stretch off into the distance, the length of at least the football field or more. And all of these people are raking and turning it to keep it drying so it doesn't build up moisture on the inside and start to mold or anything. And then if there's a cloud in the sky, the place goes crazy. Everyone runs out there and they start wrapping it up, and all these sheets kind of fold up, and they have to cut the coffee up if it rains. And then every day it's the same process. They come out, spread it out, break it during the day, fold it up at night, and put it away. And that goes on for about a week until you can get the moisture content of the bean down to where the next processing can take place. Transportation is also a huge part of the process. Most of the farms are on the side of mountains, tiny villages, remote places, and that coffee has to, at some point, make it into these other facilities. We happen to be traveling through Chiapas right during the time that they were delivering everything to market. We had about 20 people in this vehicle and about 500 or 600 pounds of coffee on the top of it before our trip was over. Human labor is, a huge part of it. It's just, I've had, I don't think it's in the movie Black Gold, but it's in the literature of Black Gold. It talks about the sort of comparison to oil, and oil is the single most traded commodity in the world as far as just trading value of dollars. But coffee is still number one for the amount of incomes that are earned off of coffee. There's not an agricultural product in the world that supplies some sort of income to more people than coffee. And
one thing to think about that just baffles me is, like, you think about, like, the ubiquity of coffee. Like, you can't, like, throw a rock in a town without hitting a coffee house. And you think about, like, coffee that you see in the supermarket and how much coffee, just the mass that there must exist even in a town of the size of Madison. Every single individual coffee cherry is picked by hand by a real person. Each cherry contains two beans, typically. So in a pound of coffee, which is about 1,000 individual coffee beans, that's 500 hand motions. And then think of how many pounds of coffee, like, you've seen it on the shelves at Willie Street Co-op or at Whole Foods or grocery stores and coffee shops and all those places. Those are all, like, real people's labor going into that. It's astounding when you have to think about how much work goes into how much you actually see.
Yeah, and that is just the picking level. Even just breaking it down to that picking level, that's a tremendous amount of labor and time that goes into it. But it's also human labor moves it. I mean, until it hits a major port, it's mostly human labor that's moving coffee around, human and donkey and animal labor. But until it hits sort of a major area where after it leaves this size of the facility, then it'll be all mechanical. It'll move from pallets to trucks to boats and to New Jersey. This is a smaller, like, I showed you the other picture of the Beneficio, which is this cooperative's headquarters. So this is just all members of one cooperative. This was the day they were selling coffee. And by the end of the day, there was just a line of sacks of coffee there. So they have to come in, they have to grade it, they have to weigh it. They give the cooperative member a receipt for it, and then when the cooperative gets paid, then they take care of paying for it. After it's graded and rebagged and ready to go, it has to be rebagged into bags that are ready for export at this point. But a lot of times people are using used bags, and they can't. They have to be rebagged into the cooperative's bags. And that's not even the next step. There's still steps past that. It does eventually need to copy. I think that's about it. Does anyone have any questions about it?